Well, good morning, everybody. Yesterday as the storm system that was rolling through the Midwest moved toward the northeast, there it is. You can see some of the snow that did come down into parts of the coastal regions of the northeast, including some snow here in New Jersey and surrounding states. But it was the brutally cold air that came in on the high pressure behind this that cleared out the skies and allowed us to get a good look at where that snow line is. It's kind of fascinating to see how sharply divided this is right here, who has the snow and who does not. That's kind of fascinating. My kids today, this is it snowed on Saturday, so Sunday, Monday, 2 days after the snowfall event, actually have a snow day at school, and that's because it was so cold behind this that as they attempted to clear the streets, some of the salt, either the brine or the pellets, was not effective at getting the ice off the streets, and too many people drove on it, which means it's just a glacier. And I think it's just a bit dangerous given the wind chill temperatures this morning. So they got a day off. And it's amazing. It's actually called a snow day, not an e-learning day. I thought the snow days were gone, but to be honest, my kids are pretty pumped right now, although they're still fast asleep. All right. Other things to take note of here. Take a look at this interesting low-level cloud, this fog that we saw yesterday in parts of Nebraska. Nebraska's been fascinating. I've been talking with a colleague and friend of mine, Eric Hunt, about the temperature distribution across the state. 30 to 50 degrees has been the swing. And then again, we've had another day of the Thule fog, which makes it, like 20, 21 days of this low-level cloud field that's been sitting here. Now, we do expect this to leave, and there's some changes that are going to be coming to this. But before I get into that real quick, just to give you a quick update, here was the 72-hour total snowfall event. And I mentioned on Friday, I always tell you guys a little bit about me, but I didn't get to go see my family over in Springfield. So my mom was a little bummed that a lot of the family couldn't come over, but it was just too much snow and too dangerous, and she understood that, and so it was all good. But just take a look at this snowfall swath as it got through parts of Indiana and Ohio, getting up to West Virginia, where we do need this moisture. We've had a more lake effect, and there's that snow in parts of New Jersey, New York that we saw yesterday as well. So these snowfall totals were relatively high out of a system that was not predicted to produce this. What I mean by not predicted is when I produce those snowfall maps, I always just use a 10-to-1 ratio. We adjust it as we discuss it, and we knew that the cold temperatures were going to bump those up. So at the Snodgrass house, we had about 8 inches of snow right in through here in East Central Illinois. All right, this got me thinking about where we are with snow this year compared to a year ago, and I want to show you the season-to-date snowfall map. Again, the season always begins on October 1st. So a couple things to take note of. A lot of Midwest snow, a lot of Great Lake effect snow. We did get a couple of events that came down the spine of the Rockies, which is good, but the Sierra Nevada are more central and southern in terms of good snowpack, and farther to the north up in the Klamath Mountains, and as an example, we're off. Same thing with parts of the Cascades in Oregon. Now, a year ago, it didn't look like that at all. We were much, much deeper in the snow into this region in parts of the West. But just take a look at the map. It's pretty. It's a very compelling view of the way this pattern has been. I did bring up the departure from normal. This is just another way to look at this. And I want you to take especially a look at the West and Midwest in this case. So again, the Cascades, especially through Oregon into the northern Sierra down, parts of the central Rockies here in Idaho, getting right over here to Wyoming, Utah, Colorado. There's pockets of better snow, but it's not like we're way past our historical normals at this point. Where we are is coming through parts of the Western Corn Belt into the Central Corn Belt, the Great Lakes states in the Northeast, where some places right now, that's my number right there, 11. We're 11 inches ahead of our historical average at this point. Now, what's fascinating is a year ago, this was like the snow hole capital of the world right here. So this map isn't through the same time period a year ago. It's all the way through the end of March of 2025. Remember, in November and December, we absolutely hammered this area with incredibly heavy snow. We saw good late season snows that got into parts of Colorado, but we brought in a tremendous amount of cold air here in the middle of winter, but sent all the snow way far down south. As you remember, the big snowfall event that hit parts of Texas, Louisiana, and other sections of the Gulf Coast. But don't forget, last year was a big year for lake effect as well, as you can see here on this map, which again takes us back to the end of March of a year ago. All right, snow is going to be top of mind for me for the next few weeks, and it's not going to be who's going to be getting more snow. Yes, that'll be the discussion out west, but it's what happens to that snowpack that's already established. So the last few videos we've been watching this. This is the snowpack, snow depth change. So take a look. We're watching snow come out of Montana, representing a warm-up. Same thing for southern parts of Alberta and Saskatchewan here. And that's by just Tuesday. Getting into Wednesday and Thursday, when this mild air really begins to build into parts of the Midwest, you see the snow eroding. And it's even eroding over here in parts of this side of the Ohio River Valley. So that's just by Thursday afternoon. Getting into the weekend, now there is another shot at cold air. I'll show you when that comes through. But watch the upper Midwest versus the West once we start next week. This is Saturday, Sunday. The jet stream dips in the west, and that allows for snow. Look at this. Look at the snow coming in just ahead of Christmas here. I'm looking over here, everybody. So on that side, whereas we watch the mild air leading into Christmas just erode the snow in much of the Midwest. So by Christmas morning, this is what the snow depth map looks like. So there you go. That is a significant shift over where we've been for the last about 22 days, I think, in terms of what the patterns look like. So this is still indicating a change in the trough position. Actually, it's a change in the big ridge. The ridge is going way over toward the Bering Sea and beyond. And now we start to see a jet dip down into California to deliver a system. And that's going to be critical to watch as we finish the month. Now, how long is it going to last? That's going to be an interesting question to ask. This mild air that's coming through that's melting the snow. But there is going to be some benefit to ag with the melting of the snow. Although for the cattle producers, cow-calf operations, dairies in through this area, we have a lot of them. I am quite concerned about the kind of the quality of life for our animals, just given it's going to be very mucky as all this snow begins to melt. But right now, that's not happening. This morning's temperature is about 5:30 a.m. It's one of the coldest spots in the country is here. It's kind of funny. I'm heading to Fargo here in a little while. And yesterday I was telling some folks, they're like, yeah, what are you going this week? I said, I'm going to head up to Fargo. And then I have an event in Wisconsin. And they're like, man, Fargo in December. I'm like, you know what? It's actually warmer in Fargo right now than it is for us. So I'm going to be going to a place warmer. And that's just kind of counterintuitive, I understand. But just take a look at the temperature distribution now this morning. We do have a lot of areas kind of outlined here in white with black kind of deep, thick lines for the counties. Those are areas where we have cold weather advisories still in place. But a lot of attention is going to turn into what's smacking into the Pacific Northwest. Incredibly strong winds that'll bleed into the plains. More flooding issues here for parts of Washington. And we're even going to add more of this up toward, eastern side of Washington, northern Idaho. And this is going to be a rough go of it for several more days this week. That area over the last 10 days has picked up, as we've been talking about, a tremendous amount of rainfall and some snow. Some pockets here easily going 10 to 15 plus inches of total liquid equivalent. Now, again, we've seen a pretty strong rain shadow effect compared to what's going on here in pockets of the the Columbia Basin. But outside of that, pushing up against the mountains, we've seen some very, very heavy rainfall. And I appreciate some of the comments last week. I did get to read them all. I didn't get to respond to all of them. I'm sorry. But I do appreciate the comments kind of informing me of what's going on in this area. The big thing I'm watching for the Northwest is this, all right? So if you just look at it, can you just kind of generally see there's a whole lot of this going on? Okay, no big, massive ridges in the way of the flow. We're developing a bigger trough feature that's going to live in this area for a while. So that's just going to open up a lot of the moisture transport to hit, this part of the Northwest early before kind of shifting around and heading back down toward more of California. You can see it when we play out our precipitable water maps. So again, these are just telling us how much water vapor is in the atmosphere and where it's concentrated. So the higher the value, the more moisture there is to make rainfall. It doesn't mean it has to, but more there is available. You just see these tongues of moisture just slamming into the west as we go through Tuesday. Wednesday's a little bit of a break, so is part of Thursday, but then you see late Thursday getting into Friday. There's your next one. And as they just kind of target the area, right where they hit it, it's kind of like a fire hose, and it can deliver a lot of moisture. And by the time we get into Saturday, take a look at where it's hitting. I mean, it's squarely against parts of San Francisco. And that's something we've not seen in a while, given how dry it's been in California after November. November was wet. Most of December's been bone dry, but we are definitely seeing flow coming in like this around a broader trough feature here. That's going to be a main story here. So what does it give us? In fact, we should have the new update. There it is. This is the 12Z WPC forecast, looking at the next 168 hours. That's 7 days of total precipitation. If there's snow in this pattern, it will be in the western mountains and right through here, okay? We do have a system to talk about. It's going to be mostly a rainmaker coming through this region. We're drier in the southeast. We're not able to drag fronts through there, and the high pressure is just keeping this area dry once again. And this corridor that we've been monitoring so carefully, that's been so dry, is going to remain that way for another week at least. I think it might go beyond that. But as you can tell, very, very heavy rainfall and then high snowfall amounts getting higher into the mountains here still continue to hit parts of the Pacific Northwest. Now, to kind of put some maps to this conversation about how dry it's been in pockets, just take note of this large area extending from the plains to parts of the Mid-South. I think some of our driest air has been right into this corridor here compared to normal, and then in the southwestern United States especially. Now, again, Montana, we talked about this last week. Some pockets here have been seem extremely beneficial moisture, and it's working to knock out some of these drought issues. But as I pointed out last week, my map does not adequately capture some of the drier pockets that are experiencing the rain shadow effect just off the mountains. Statistically, though, I now have 5 climate reporting districts, which are all big, but 5 climate reporting districts in Montana reporting that this is their new wettest start to the month of December on record. Meanwhile, Northern California and the parts of Arkansas, Missouri, Southern Illinois are having their driest. And it just gets us curious about this distribution of precipitation and what it might mean for that soil moisture. Now, even with all that snow sitting on top here, we've not been able to get that moisture down into the soil, which is why these 16-inch depth numbers are still so very low in this region. But we're going to be anticipating some change in that as we bring in more mild air over the next, let's call it 2 weeks. I think that's what the extent of what we're going to be dealing with here. All right, Mississippi River. Many of you have been asking to see what's up with the river. I just want to point out that this morning it's nearly 8 feet below low stage, which means it's coming down here and kind of matching where it was after the Bermuda high left in August and September and October here. We can just see that it has maintained that level. So that soil moisture, this has to come up for the water to drain. And some of the snowmelt that we're expecting will get quickly into the river system, but I'd be curious to see how much of it we can really bring that up. Because for the next 2 weeks, your pattern is pretty well established. High pressure moving this way, big block in Scandinavia, which is off the map. And this is going to allow lows to dip in and toss this moisture. Now, I had thought last week that we were going to get a pattern that was going to be more progressive, but it seems as though the total momentum of the atmosphere is dropping. And what that means is wherever the ridges get set up, they tend to stay. And as a consequence, there's some staying power to the larger ridge that's here, keeping so much of that area that's been so drier into the forecast. That's going to be a critical piece to this. What I'm talking about is this. Remember Friday? I said, look, there's this European omega block, big Scandinavian ridge here. We then watched the ridge open into the United States as deep troughs developed here, Gulf of Alaska, British Columbia. And this high pressure cell was kind of a split one, and it's sharing kind of a reflection of this big ridge here. All right. As I look at it, I see some pretty sizable, just large ridges across the entirety of the northern hemisphere. And where you're not in one of those, you're in persistent trough, like here or here in the North Atlantic. And that's going to have a dramatic effect not only in the precip pattern I just showed you, but also in temperatures. Watch this. This is the new European 5-day sliding window of average temperature anomalies. So here's your next 5 days. And as we slide this out through day 5 through 10, look at all that warmth. And it's just reoriented, the position of the jet. It's weakened. It's farther to the north. And we're just splitting North America almost on the U.S.-Canada border with who's cold and who's warm. Day 10 through 15, I'm just looking for any hint of a change in this, and I just don't see it. In fact, there's better ensemble support as we work our way toward the end of the month of just opening up to more mild air into the midsection of the country. Now, what are we looking at here? I always get asked that. The European model, I believe you're seeing the 51-member ensemble. There is 101 ensembles in total. So what that means, ensemble members in total, we run the model with different initial conditions to try to sniff out error in the forecast. We run it 100 different times or 50 different times. Doesn't matter. You run it a bunch. And so a lot of folks are like, well, I've seen some forecasts that just drop more cold air. Yeah, you're going to see that. There will be brief interludes of cooler weather. This is just a 5-day average looking at somewhere north of 50 model runs. Does that make sense? So what we're looking for here is some consistency, and there's a lot of warm air in this area going forward. All right, with all that being said, I'm looking for something that could trigger it away from that. And we know right now that our polar vortex is still a mess. Look at this. That's the main lobe of the vortex there. There's a second piece that's sitting over here. And this is our large stratospheric warming event that we've been monitoring now for about 3 weeks. The models are doing something like this. So you see it? There's the warming event. There's the polar vortex. As we play it forward, I'm trying to see if the polar vortex ever gets its act back together. Out there around December 18th, 19th, 20th, it seems to want to pull back north temporarily, and it kind of sits off in 2 broken pieces, one here and one there. But the size of this warming event is nothing like we've seen lately. And I'm bringing this up because it seems as though we're finally starting to come out of the basement here, back into the normal range of the polar vortex. And some of the models into early January, look at the lines in here, are keeping this much closer toward an average. Now, again, what are all the squiggly lines? Those are each of the ensemble members. Okay, that this is all the possibilities of the forecast based off of the modeling technique of initializing error into the forecast to see how robust the forecast is. That's the very simple way of describing what we're doing there. Okay, we got a lot of slides to go, so let's finally get into some near-term weather here. Some Great Lakes snow, next push of moisture coming into the northwest right now, and we're going to watch this today kind of move through the pattern just like that. So snow in Ontario, some lake effect here, some getting into Quebec and upstate parts of New York and Vermont, New Hampshire. But as we play it forward, we kind of get into a quiet middle week. That's not too bad. What, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? We still see more moisture coming in Tuesday night into the northwest, but outside of that, much of the rest of the country gets a little bit of a break. All the action's here. Okay, where do we go after this? Well, let's now just stretch it out between our European and GFS solutions here. GFS left, European right. Again, all that action's in the northwest. There's a little clipper that moves Tuesday over parts of Ontario into Quebec. Both models have it. But take a look at these snows coming in. We're going to take a closer look at that in a second. What I am curious about is watch the end of this week. Here we go. This is Wednesday into Thursday. The model's taking that low and dropping it here in the northern plains, right in through here. And we are likely going to have higher pressure over the kind of the southeast mid-Atlantic, which could open up some Gulf flow. There it is. And by Thursday, we're watching pretty widespread rain coming into this area. Now, you noticed a minute ago, I showed you the precipitation anomalies, and it's still drier. This is like our only shot at rain coming into this area. And it's not heavy, and it moves quick. That's by Thursday evening. By Friday morning, it's already up the East Coast. On the back side of this, there is high pressure and colder air, so we're going to watch for some lake effect. We're going to watch for some strong winds, and the northwest gets its next round right away. So if we go beyond this Friday into the weekend, be taking note of the back side of that low. There could be into the northeast a pretty rapid shift over to some heavy snow. Again, this is Friday. It's something to monitor all week. Going beyond that, little clipper hits the Great Lakes. Watch this. This is now Friday into Saturday. Snows move down the Rocky Mountains. We have a little stalled out front that's in here. Both models have it. Maybe Sunday, bringing in a little bit more moisture to some drier areas. But the real show's in the west. It just keeps hammering the west. So let's go take a closer look at the west, okay? I'm going to show you just total precipitation here, first of all. So again, we're playing through Monday into Tuesday. This is now Wednesday. Thursday and Friday are getting added. Now watch the moisture just slide down more of California. And you get out there 10 days. Look at that. The end of the 10-day time period, around the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, we're seeing this get all the way down to LA. But that's quite a bit there in terms of total moisture. How about total snow real quick? All right, not a whole lot early except for way far north, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And as we play it forward, watch it build down the Rockies, build down the Sierra Nevada. And this just seems to be more and more of a robust solution the farther out we get in this forecast. The GFS is very similar. I just want to play it for you so you can see some model similarities here. But man, as I look at it, there is just a hole in the midsection of the United States that has to be discussed. So real quick, the rest of the country, total snowfall, rest of the country and the Canadian prairie. Outside of the mountains in the west, there's your corridor right there. All right. And just remember, on the back side of the low, that's late this week into the early weekend, we're going to watch for more snow here. And quickly, there's the ECMWF solution. That's out a week. Probability-wise, this is the chance at grabbing over the next 10 days another 3 inches. And we talked at the beginning about the eroding snow line here, going farther and farther to north. But out west, if we jump this up to a foot, there's some great snows coming in here. We need every single bit of this. And then look at that, right through there. pay attention to that. Precipitation-wise, let's look at probabilities for who's going to be on the drier side of average. I mean, this is bone dry. Four corner states, most of them at least. Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, parts of Missouri, Iowa, even up in South Dakota. Probability of staying under 1/10 of an inch, very high. And you can also see how dry it's going to be down in the southeast. How about 1/2 inch? See what that ridge is doing? That ridge is just taking any chances of returning moisture into this area out of the picture. So that gets us out there just saying, what is that pattern? Well, this is the system on Thursday that's going to sneak through and bring in the really cold air behind it, giving us those chances of snow here. But watch the ridge as that system goes through, develop into the central U.S. Watch. This is Sunday, Monday, the 22nd, 23rd, 24th. We are in a highly amplified pattern. Large ridge opens here. Flow's got to go over the top of this. It's going to hit the West Coast hard. And that's where the models have landed 10 days from now. And therefore, getting into that week 2 time period, the West has the risk for the heaviest precipitation. Climate Prediction Center put this out yesterday on Sunday. They'll update this in a couple hours today. They put this out for the risk of heavy snow. Look at the Sierra Nevada, just adding it up finally in those areas that I mentioned at the beginning of the video were getting missed. Same thing for parts of the Rockies. And the winds are going to be absolutely ferocious with this. And we don't have to wait till week 2 to deal with strong winds. I mean, you'll see it right away. Because as this flow comes on, see this? Look at this. All of the models have honed in on that western U.S. trough. See? Very dry, central U.S., southeast dry. And with this, like I mentioned, watch these winds. Just playing it through Monday into Tuesday. We're already, by Wednesday, this is a 60-hour forecast, watching for winds here, 50, 60, 70 miles an hour. Northern plains, incredibly strong winds. They're going to stretch all the way to the Great Lakes, and we're just going to add. I mean, look at this. Toward the end of the week, Thursday, coming down Wyoming, parts of Nebraska, parts of Colorado. You know what this wind is? It's downslope, which means it's going to be mild. Very, very warm. All right? Speaking of temperatures, this is where we've been. This is what things have looked like since Thanksgiving when this pattern kind of settled into its current regime here. And if you just take a look at what these temperatures are going to do, here's today's highs. Watch the Central Plains. That's Tuesday's highs, Wednesday's highs. I mean, we're almost 30 degrees warmer than normal on Wednesday here. Getting in toward Thursday, big warm up, melting some of that snow. There is that little push. Now remember, I told you behind that low, watch the push of cold coming through. This is Friday morning. But look at the plains. Oh, by the way, did you see the cold anomalies leave the Central Valley of California? That's finally the breakdown of that deep cloud layer and fog. That's Saturday, getting in towards Sunday, December 21st. That is our solstice. And there we go. Now, if we look beyond this, look at the forecast maps from all 3 of our kind of major models that I like to look at carefully. And they all kind of show something similar as we look out day 5 through 10, day 10 through 15, and day 15. 5 through 10, 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15. And we were in the current temperature pattern for about 20 days. And right now we're seeing maybe 20 days of this. I don't know. It's just something to consider. I've been trying to pay attention to maybe the reason why. What got us here in November was this late buildup into December of momentum. That's what changed the pattern up, got things flowing a bit differently. And now the momentum is dropping back off, as you can see here. We're even noticing that the forecast from the CFSV2 model, not the most reliable, but it is a useful model, is dropping global momentum down, okay? What that's going to do is that's going to change our global wind oscillation and put it way down here in the basement. And again, if you're below this line, this just means the pattern tends to get stretched out into longer waves, and we get more circumglobal, especially in the northern hemisphere, ridges. If it comes up here, then we're moving. Everything's changing. We're questioning when and if that's going to happen. One of the interesting things that's occurred, which is what often happens when there's a La Niña, is that you get that drop in momentum. And our La Niña is not, I keep saying La Niña's peaking, it's probably going to die soon. Man, in the last week, we've seen a surge of trade winds. We've seen more La Niña-esque behavior in the atmosphere. And right now, I told you last Friday, I'm not using the MJO as a predictor. I'm just not. It's this phase 8 business you're seeing here is not because the MJO is tossing up huge convection in phase 8. Big convectively coupled waves have moved across the planet, and it's a miscalibration of how to use this. Just go, oh yeah, we're in phase 8, let's go. What I really think is happening is that we may have to go searching for some analogs. And I got asked over the weekend about one year in particular, and I just thought I would address it before I show you the models. 1989. Now, going into that winter of 88-89, we watched a rapid development of a La Niña and then a rapid collapse. Now, you could say we're doing something like that. We've watched, this La Niña come in, and it's going to collapse. We all expect that. But just notice the magnitude difference between 89 and the current event. I just want to point that out, okay? To show you, though, some similarities, I went over here and I've highlighted 1989, and you'll see the color show up right there. And the thick line that's already on there is 2025. So you can make note that we were similar in here. Watch. If I go back to 89, okay. And then 89 getting into, 90, kind of, we recovered those ocean temps. And so I don't know. Is it a year? Well, let's go look at a couple things. This was December 1988. Now remember, summer of 1988 was not what we had in summer of 2025. But, you can kind of pick out a few things. Mild here in December of 88. Yeah, we're definitely doing that. But we've not been cold here until you get into the very end of the month. We have been cold there, though. That's for sure. So I'm like, all right, maybe. But this is what happened after, December 1988 into 1989. January of 89 was quite mild. And be interesting to see if we do flip the pattern around and how much moisture can return. I don't know. I had to look at something. In fact, let's go look at the moisture real quick since I have this here. Flip this over to temperature. Now, I just want to make very clear here. I don't think this is the strongest analog. But people are asking, so I was like, yeah, let's go have a look at it. So there's your January 1989 precipitation. All right. I don't know, maybe 90 is a better look at this. Let's go look at 90. There's 90 for precip. Wow, super wet there and super wet there. And what about 90 for temperatures? Whew. Very mild. I don't know. Okay, we looked at it. That 88 to 89, it was just a question I got asked. I showed it to you. Maybe 89 to 90 is the more, I don't know. How long does this last, though? What is the CPC looking for? They are not there. If you look at the CPC forecast, their prediction for the end of December and start of January is very mild south, but colder north, near normal in the northeast. That's the opposite of what I just showed you. They're super wet here and dry there. So that whole thing I just did with 88, 89, 90, that's just to answer a question from a very loyal viewer. But I there's what the CPC came up with on Friday. And I think what I'm going to be watching most carefully is this. You know it. There's the trough developing off the west coast, and the new European model does not let it go. Just keeps it all the way to mid-January. So what that means is we see rounds of ridging that's set up, and then the model just hold on to ridging for a long time. Now, again, whenever you look at these, the blues mean troughs here. These reds means ridges there. And that would be a complete reversal of the pattern we've been in for so long. Now, what are the models doing with it? They're giving us an outlook for the month of let's call it December 21 to January 21 like this. So high pressure building here, high pressure staying there, flow coming around, mild air into this area, but wet. They're going wetter Great Lakes, eastern central Corn Belt, very wet in the west, very dry in the southeast. And the GFS looks something similar to that. So we'll just have to sit tight and see how this evolves once we get into this. Remember, we're not there yet. I need to see where that high pressure goes off here into this region. Okay, let's wrap it up with South America very quickly here. This is what the precip looked like over the last week. Models did an excellent job picking up on this, and this filled in some of the gaps that were very dry in this area. Just to show you, though, the next 10 days, we're going to see parts of like Sao Paulo, getting out to Paraná, Santa Catarina going a bit drier. But the models are calling for above average precipitation for most of Mato Grosso and northern Argentina, where we're drier down in Buenos Aires over toward Cordoba. That's the next 10 days. But extended outlooks, doesn't matter if you look at the GFS or the European, they're all kind of bullseyed in on very wet conditions here. And this can become a big story once we get to mid-January. If this whole region, especially Mato Grosso, stays so wet, it can very much delay the harvest of soybeans, and that could be a story. I don't think it is right now, but it could be a story as we get further on into the outlooks here. All right, I have kept you enough this morning. You kind of see where Matt and I are going to take this week. I'm going to head off to Fargo, where it is warmer than where it is here, and Matt will pick this up in the morning. Take care, everybody.